When I was nearly finished with my game, staring at a save file that said 73% complete, I could think only one thing: please don't ever end. And that's the thought that was continually at the back of my mind every moment that I played The Last of Us, and it's one reason why I'm glad I'm more of a PC gamer than a console one. To explain the relevance of that remark, let's go back to my childhood, where my consoles were all Nintendo based, and that's where all of my video games were played. At first, at least. Then came Commander Keen, Duke Nukem, SimCity, and the rest of the flood that overwhelmed my console life, washing away the imprecision of a controller joystick for the sweet DPIs of a gaming mouse. I'm no member of the so-called PC master race, as I still like to play a few console games, but every time I think about picking up the controller, a feeling of "meh" washes over me, and 9 times out of 10 I turn back to my computer and find something there to play instead. This feeling of generalized apathy towards consoles, whatever the root cause may be, has turned my playthrough of The Last of Us into one that took several days instead of just a day or two, leaving me more time to savor each and every bit and morsel the game has to offer. When I turned the console off after an hour of play, I was left with a feeling of excitement and despair at knowing that my next session would be coming soon, but that with each subsequent one, the game was drawing closer to the end. If you've spent any time at all on the internet in the last 3 months, you will have undoubtedly been told how fantastic The Last of Us is, or you've already experienced it for yourself. If you're a parent, the emotions provided by the cinematic experience will have you chilled to the bone, as it did to me. Though I saw the opening sequence coming from a mile away, I found myself having to close my eyes at the end, unable to continue watching the heartbreak unfold before me. With this short and gut-wrenching opening sequence, the game became more than just a survival story. There was a personal connection forged that continued throughout the game, tugging at parts of my heart that were oftentimes too close for comfort, perhaps even more so at the end than the arguably more emotionally jarring opening. The Last of Us isn't just an emotional roller coaster, though. The story itself is both memorable and unique, intertwining so deeply with the gameplay that I really do feel as though I'm playing a multi-award-winning movie and not just a game. The twists and turns I experienced were fairly obvious, but that did nothing at all to lessen the impact. If anything, it increased it, forcing me to expect the darkness and then have it exposed and examined in excruciating detail. The virtually seamless transition between gameplay and cinematic sequences aids with the immersion, though there's even more to it than that. Every movement, no matter how hard you try to mess it up, will be seamless and fluid in The Last of Us. And this comes at the price of open-worldiness, but for a game like this, you don't need an open world. I can count on one hand the number of times I had issues getting around in the game, and though the AI occasionally got in my way, it was surprisingly natural. Having Ellie call out "behind you" or "on your left" when I was in a firefight was so natural that I didn't even pay attention to it at first, having not been used to being helped in such a close and personal manner. With the aid of warnings like this, I was able to transition quickly between shooting, stabbing, and bludgeoning enemies to death. If the sound of that doesn't really match your picture of how The Last of Us is meant to be played, you're right. I was far too aggressive in most situations, choosing to use pipes and bullets to solve my problems instead of sneaking past them or silently knocking them out with a rear-naked chokehold. Make no mistake about it, stealth in The Last of Us is hard, and it requires obscene levels of patience and diligence to carry out properly. I played through the game on normal difficulty and only struggled in a few sections. I can scarcely imagine playing on a higher difficulty level, which requires a level of stealth and sneakiness that would seem to be impossible for the average person to pull off. I've deliberately avoided talking about the game's story, but I have to dig down into the characters just a bit. And just like the story, Joel and Ellie's personal relationship transformation is an amazing thing to behold. And not only that, it feels viscerally real. Apart from Joel's Spec Ops-like training, there's virtually nothing about the two main characters or the experiences that they go through that takes you out of the game because it feels out of place. Ellie's reaction to Joel's killing, her reaction to her first killing, how they view each other through their journey, and even how they interact with an ill-fated pair that they meet along their journey is real enough to be unsettling. There's no action hero, no chain gun, no aerial bombardment, no mystical powers, or any other Deus Ex Machina that comes along to save the day. The events that unfold around Joel and Ellie are brutal, but there are a few moments of hope that break through the clouds, reminding you what you're fighting for. Exiting a dark building filled with infected to see a bright, shining city in front of me, filled with a herd of giraffe wandering by, made me genuinely smile. And I felt what I imagined would be an infinitesimally small piece of what the situation would truly feel like. Likewise, during the tense moments, I found myself verbally cheering on my characters, something I can't remember doing for any other game. One scene involving Ellie and a brutal bandit caused me to shout, urging Ellie on as she ran, ducked, dodged, and finally slaughtered her enemy. Other members of the house certainly didn't appreciate the outbursts, but the fact that I became so connected to the characters is just another reason on a huge pile of ones that explain why The Last of Us is so fantastic. The Last of Us was what prompted me to finally break down and buy a PS3 just a day after the PS4's E3 presentation, and it's a decision that I can't stop being thankful for. I'll always be a PC gamer at heart, but The Last of Us has done an exquisite job at wearing down a callus against consoles that's been building for years, and is slowly making me want to play console games just a little bit more often. For that, I am both grateful and awestruck, as this is the first time I've felt that way in years. I'm Mike, this is Game Night with Mike. Thanks for watching, I'll be back again soon.